Welcome to the Property Maintenance Show. We're here with your show's hosts, Albert Taylor and Paul Quell, and we're brought to you by Octagon Work Services. Our main mission is to discuss the property management industry, vendor relations, homeowner and tenants, controversial topics in the property management industry, stuff that no one else wants to talk about. So, hope you enjoy it, and let's get started.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Property Maintenance Show. I'm here with my co-host Albert Taylor and myself Paul Quill, and today we have a legend on the show. His name is Joe Glass. Joe has been in the property management industry for 26 years and he has seen it all. He's seen the good, the bad and the ugly. We will be jumping into many different topics about the industry and getting Joe's opinions and experience and different kinds of topics. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joe, and welcome to the show. How
Welcome.
are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great.
Excellent. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So normally I like to start with kind of a basic question. You know, how did you get started in the property management business, and what do you enjoy the most about the day-to-day operations?
So I got started. My mom was a property manager. So ever since I was in kindergarten that I can remember, we've had doors to our apartments open up to the office. So I've always been around it. I was filling out deposit slips when I was in middle school. So she's done a lot of student housing. So it's been an interesting experience. A lot of moving around, but all the residents that were always there, were always great. What I like most about the industry is it's not your like day-to-day, I'm going to go in and, hammer on some nails. It's a lot of personal interactions, whether it's with the residents or on the vendor side. And I mean, it's different. I would typically go into work probably an hour early before we open our doors, because that's the only time that I get my paperwork done. Because after that, it's just constant, people coming in your office, your leasing agents, resident issues, vendors coming in. But it's, like I said, it's great. There's always someone to talk to. It's great community.
Okay, so you're from Florida, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just want to make sure just an off question I have. I know there's a lot of hurricanes, right? That's pretty common knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So,
They just had one come through. I know there's another one out there right now, but I don't think it's expected to hit land. And it's kind of just the nature of the beast. To live in sunny Florida, except for hurricane season.
the hurricane season. Yeah, I've always wondered. Imagine you have the vendors there are a lot different. I bet they're more veteran, right? Or do you see any difference there between other vendors in other parts of the country?
No, not really. And a lot of our vendors travel, so they get well-rounded with just different aspects, but they try to keep everything pretty uniformed across the board. So.
Okay. Well, I imagine all the roof jobs. I'm just imagining like a house without a roof and everything blown up over the place.
Yeah, surprisingly, like the apartments really don't get really the brunt of damage unless you're on the coast, and then there's more issues. But like trees falling on buildings, but even then, it's rare. Like unless you get like the hurricane that hits directly on the beach, but if it does, there's typically not apartments directly on the beach.
Right, they learned.
Yeah, they're inwards, just maybe a couple streets, and you got your personal condos that are built up.
Okay.
Is there any, for example, is there any procedure that a property management company would follow when there is like an alert for a hurricane or flood?
Each large company has their policies and procedures that they'll follow, and they'll send out from corporate, because nobody it's rare that it does happen. So other than that, the smaller ones will just advise by what the local state agencies are telling them to do. If it's evacuate, if it's, hunker down, just make sure your residents are stocked up and stuff like that.
Okay.
Is natural disasters like that covered under homeowners insurance?
So I tell every resident that comes in, they need to have renter's insurance, because if something were to happen to the building, my insurance is going to cover for me to build a new building. It's not going to cover for their personal belongings. So
that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely good advice. Yeah.
It's actually some companies are starting to require it, and they have teamed up with specific insurance companies that target multifamily housing and rentals. And you can sign up right in the office when you're signing your lease, and sometimes it's mandatory that you do so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually true, Joe. I think before we left our property management company, before we started our own business, I think they were starting to implement that in.
Yeah, I remember they were. Yeah.
Like the renter's insurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
not everybody was very happy about that.
at first, yeah, it was a big change for them. They were like, "Oh, do I need to? Do I
Yeah.
have to?"
For what it's like $120 a year, or between 120 and 160. It's typically what I've seen.
Yeah.
So,
but they'll cry about it.
Yeah, they do. But at the end of the day, I'm like, it's worth that peace of mind that something happens, because you can't control your neighbors. And if your neighbors catch a kitchen fire and it burns your apartment,
oh yeah,
it's out of your control.
Goodbye TV and everything else.
Yep.
Yeah.
They don't hang their TV on the wall properly and it falls off, which they're not supposed to be doing anyway. But
right. Yeah. I mean, that's good. Yeah. So something like that could happen. Or there's a leak in the ceiling from your neighbor upstairs.
Yep.
Drips right on the TV.
And a lot of those times, I mean, we, as the management company, will help out if it's something small like that. Like your refrigerator goes out and all your food spoils. I've known management companies to, cut them a check. They get them a receipt for what was purchased.
That's nice. Yeah, our last company wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't.
I will say, no, there was one that I dealt with that basically the tenant had to send like a receipt of all the items, and then I think the homeowner would then deduct it from the rent. I think that's how it would work.
Yeah, for private individuals.
Yeah.
And a lot of, when you get into the private sector, depending on how handy you are, if you're able to fix an issue, they'll take it off your rent. I'm going to say from personal experience, don't do it. I had my refrigerator go out, and I was renting from a private individual. And it was like, well, he's like, I don't mind giving you a new one, but it's not going to be there for like a week. And I'm like, whoa, I need a fridge. So he's like, well, if you find one, he's like, I'll go buy it and just, you can put it in. And I'm like, okay. So I go and I found one at Lowe's, but even at Lowe's, it takes a week for them to deliver. But they had one on special. It was like a cash and carry deal. And he agreed. He came down, purchased the fridge, and as I'm wheeling it out of Lowe's, the whole thing, 400-pound fridge falls on me.
Oh no!
Oh wow!
It was, yeah, it was not a pretty sight, but.
Oh no! Yeah.
Yeah, so I will never do that again.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one, like, I think because previously, in the industry, I was a maintenance manager. So one of the instances that I dealt with regarding refrigerator was actually two, right? So one of them was that I had to order a new refrigerator on behalf of the homeowner, and we used like the company's credit card.
Yeah.
So I had to get the measurements, right? And again, this is something I'd recommend like never to do, right? This is probably my early days of my career. I asked the tenant to do the measurements,
Yeah, I remember that one.
right?
Yeah.
Which is a big mistake.
Yeah.
And so they give me the measurements. I check, I think on Home Depot, I look for the right one, meets the measurements, get it delivered, and then it doesn't fit in the
Yeah,
space.
soaps. Yeah.
Right? It's like it's off by like 1 inch. So what I had to do is
Yeah, just cut it
basically
off.
the countertop was
Yep.
blocking it, right? So I don't know how I pulled this off, right? It's a miracle. That's what I'll say. I managed to have the tenant pay for us to send a handyman to cut the unit, and I got the owner's approval to do it as well, so it would fit in the space.
Yeah, that's
But if the owner said no and the tenant wouldn't pay for it, I was like completely screwed. But it was one of those lessons, like, and after that day, I would never trust the tenant, like, to measure anything. Like they would say, "Oh, I can measure it," and I go, "No, it's best we, get the professional there.
yeah.
He's gonna measure everything." Um, so yeah, that was quite a wild one. And then the other one was this was a LA property, and and the the tenant, she was hard work, right? Very difficult tenant. She always phoned in. She was always shouting at everybody, right? Sometimes just because she
Yeah.
probably had a bad day and she just wanted to shout at someone.
I want to speak to Paul.
And
Yep.
so her refrigerator broke down, um, and she wanted a new one like right away, right? But there's a process to this, right? Especially in maintenance.
Yep.
She's like shouting at me on the phone, "I need a refrigerator today. Oh, my food's gonna go out." And I'm like, "Okay, let me work on it." Eventually, I think the homeowner said to me, "Well, tell the tenant to purchase a new one, and yeah, we'll take off the rent." But that was the only quickest option, right?
Right.
She was being really difficult. She wouldn't wait on the delivery time. Like you said, it takes up to a week to get delivered to the property. So it ended up, eventually I managed to convince her to go ahead with that. I think she went on Craigslist. She managed to get one, and I think she got it hauled away and then sent us all the receipts, and then finally, got all the deductions made on the rent. But yeah, when the refrigerator breaks down, it's quite a process.
But I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, in Texas, we're not such crybabies. I mean, we go down to Walmart and get a cooler, one of the igloo ones, go 7-Eleven, get the ice, and we're good for a few days, right? So,
Yeah.
Well, when you have like apartment communities where you're sitting on like 600 units, typically you got at least one or two vacancies, and you can swap out what the vacant one and get it done the same day. If you're at 100% occupancy and you don't have one of those vacant units, um, we've got vendors that we work with like ARD, and they'll be out next day with a fridge. They'll install it, they'll haul the old one away, and it's just literally a phone call away. I mean, my rep, I'll call him, whenever, could be midnight. I'll call him. He's like, "I'll have you one tomorrow."
oh wow, that doesn't happen in Texas.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's good as well. I used to like remind homeowners, like kind of educate them that when you do get a new refrigerator, you can register it. Like for example, let's say it's like a Whirlpool one, right? You can register the manufacturer warranty on their website. So, and it has up to maybe between 8 to 10 years. And then
So,
maybe you could tell me more about that, Joe, if you know
well, on that, that's where I would take it back to the management company,
Right.
because, what's going to happen in 8 years when the refrigerator goes out and the warranty's under the resident who was there 8 years ago, and having to claim that. So I know when we do like new construction, there is an audit sheet, and we're going through checking all the appliances. We got to write the serial numbers down for every appliance that's in that apartment, and that's just the whole property's done that way. So there is an issue, especially with new appliances. It's all warrantied out. They'll come and replace it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Or when we're taking over a property, it's part of the due diligence process, is getting all that information as well.
That's a lot more organized than we used to be over there. And we would be like surprised, hey, the mailbox key might or might not work. Yeah, 50-50 chance. You never know. It's like,
Right?
really? That's our inspection? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
What was one of your most difficult encounters, like with a tenant or maybe a homeowner? If you can tell us a story.
The juicy details.
Yeah, I got two at the same property.
Okay.
So there was this property in Tampa. The owner prior, it was a Section 8 property, so it was all
Right.
vouchers. And the owner did not care about the residence portion, $25 that they were supposed to pay because his check was coming from Section 8 and HUD. That's, a couple $100. That's all he cared about. Well, the company that I worked for, they purchased the property. Well, let me phrase it. They bought the property. They had a manager there. They think that she showed up the first day and never came back. Like never clocked into work or anything after seeing the property.
Right.
So the VP called me up and he knew I was in the area. He was actually one of my mom's residents back when I was in either middle school or high school. He's seen me before, but I don't really remember who he was. So he's like, hey, I got a property, we come help me out. Sure. So I go to the property and they bought it to renovate it to turn it into luxury student housing. So every resident had to move. There was no that they could stay. There was no, you can stay even after we've renovated. The housing authority should have never let them live there to begin with. It was in pretty bad condition. So when the cops drove through and doing their patrol, I introduced myself. I told him, what was going on, what we're doing. He laughed at me. He's like, yeah, we've seen people try to do it before. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is what I do. This is specifically why I was brought here. He's like, all right, I'll believe it when I see it. And that first month, I filed 75 evictions. And I'm like, you guys owe me $20. I'm like, on the third, here's your notice. After you don't pay me, here's your eviction. And the residents, someone just couldn't pay. And so, but once that happened, it kicked off the police coming in and serving the warrants that they would not serve because it's such a bad area. The residents were paying the private security to protect them. So the security was getting owner from the residents and from the owner of the property. So we had to let him go. So we had two residents that were there. And one of them, the gentleman was in a wheelchair. His apartment was on the second floor. There was no elevators. They were stairs. I didn't meet him when we took over the property because he was in the hospital for a heart attack. So once he got out, he came to the office and explained that we have his money and, he wanted it. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. This was the one resident that somehow his rent was paid up for like a full 2 years. So I'm like, well, this is what's going on here. The residents, we need to move. I found another company willing to take all the residents. They supplied them with moving boxes and movers. So all they had to do was pack up their stuff and go. Well, this gentleman in the wheelchair came up to my office, just screaming and hollering. And he wanted it. It was the Morgan or the J.G. Wentworth commercials. I was like, I want my money and I want it now. Just was screaming over and over and over. And so we're like, okay, let me call corporate. Let me get you your money. I'll get you a check. I'll have it here tomorrow for you. So he's like, okay, goes back to his apartment. His apartment always had 15 cans of 16-ounce beer. just laying out in front of his front door. And me and the development manager, we're walking our property in the morning time, and he literally tried to piss on our heads.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it was bad.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
from a wheelchair. That's gotta be it. Yeah.
Well,
that's quite a skill, right? On a wheel.
I'm imagining that. Yeah. So-
And so later on that day, he calls the cops, or somebody calls the cops, and then they get there to start talking to him. And, I was telling him what happened earlier, and I'm like, this is what's going on. And so they went to go talk to him. And they were upstairs, so I didn't really hear what they said. And it's me and the development manager, at the bottom of the stairs. And so after the cop, they came and talked to me again. And, they're like, why are you giving this man a hard time? You shouldn't harass him. He's in a wheelchair, and blah, 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 blah. And they were doing it just really, really loud. And all of a sudden, he comes walking around the building on top of it, on the second floor where the stairs are. And the cops are like, oh my God, it's a miracle you can walk. And he's still screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually they had to haul him off to jail. They took him. I don't know how long he was there because he was back the next day. And so I had his check came in. He came to the office in the morning, wasn't there yet. Mail came, check was in the mail. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you this check. I'm like, but I need your keys. That's the deal. I'm giving you back all your rent. I'm like, and you're going to turn over the unit to me. He's like, yeah. I'm like, so I call one of the officers. I'm like, hey, can you come here and just, while this is happening? And she's like, sure. And I'm like, so we talked to the guy. We're like, hey, do you have anything in your apartment that you would like to keep? Because once I give you this check and you give me those keys,
that's it.
That's it. You can't go back. And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I gave him his check. He gave me the keys. Well, they start going to wheel back to his apartment. And again, on the second floor. So I'm like, nope. I send the development manager. I'm like, go change the locks before he can get there. And he did. And then so he gets back to his apartment. He starts banging on the door, demanding that we let him in. Oh. And I'm like, we can't do this. Yeah. So then the officer ended up hauling him back off the jail. And I don't think we saw him again after that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That would have been hell.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a story, man.
Yeah.
Well, especially him trying to urinate on
a
wheelchair.
That's gangster.
Yeah. So we were just standing just below, talking. And all of a sudden, you just hear it behind me. Luckily, it missed.
Is it raining?
Yeah. I was like, what is going on? I see him. I'm like, oh, what is this? Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess maybe to ask it in a positive way, is it what's been one of your best experiences, either again with a tenant or a homeowner?
I mean, it's really, I think the best experience that I've had is when I was in student housing, and you get a resident who stays there their entire 4 years while they're in college. You see them come in as a freshman, you see them go out after they graduate. Sometimes you'll keep track. Me and some of my old residents are still friends on Facebook now. And you just get to see what they've done. They came in young kid, now they're going off and they're doctors, lawyers, whatever their field may be. Yeah, it's probably
that is good.
One of the good parts.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, imagine if one of them becomes a police officer or something, you can call him, hey, can you help me out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had one become a cop. And then we actually had him come back to be our resource officer on the property.
Oh, okay.
He got to go back to his same apartment, except live there for free now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, Joe, I want to get into some questions about the business aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I wanted to start with this, what your opinion is. Which one do you think is better? Do you think charging a management fee or taking a percentage of the rent?
So typically those are one and the same. The management fee will range from what I've seen anywhere between 5 and 10%, and that is the management fee.
Hmm.
So, and it's good because it's going to incentivize the management company to take care of the property, because the more they take care of it, then they can increase the rents, and then they're rewarded for being able to do that.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And so I guess this next question is, if you had to pick like a workflow process, like within day-to-day operations, which one do you feel needs to improve or basically change?
Um,
There's
I
so
would,
many.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's not really. The only thing like I dread is the first of the month.
Right.
And that's really like it's just, and it's gotten a whole lot better. Don't get me wrong, because back in the day, people would come in with the rent checks,
Oh yeah.
and then you have to fill out the deposit slips and take to the bank. Well, then they got a little better, and then it was check scanners, and so that never really wanted to work anyway. But you didn't have to go anywhere and you could scan them in. Well, now you got online payment, which makes things so much easier. And then with the COVID that happened, it really trained residents to pay online. But then it's just the process for those people who don't pay. It's just going through the books, having to send them a 3-day, then having to take the file, send it to the attorney, and it's just you have to 3-day somebody for $20. I mean, it's it is what it is, but it's on the books as delinquent. And that's just the process. You can't really, fair housing, doesn't give any leeway on stuff like that. And the management companies want to see you at, zero delinquency every month. But I mean, you're going to every single property, or, in my case, it's every front door, and posting these notices. And, it's just, I didn't like that part. But there was a way to change that and even make it more digital, so there was no having to go and post a notice on someone's front door because your neighbor, you could have,
Right.
missed it by $20 because you had a lockout fee and you forgot about it. And then you're walking by and your neighbor's like, "Oh, you're being evicted."
Oh wow.
No, but
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
Do you think the eviction process should change, or what improvements do you think it needs?
well, I mean, just in that case, if we were, able to do digital delivery, a lot of things now you can track, who opens the email, and if you put an email on file, that's where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That would make things a whole lot easier, sometimes more discreet. But so, and it's different in all places. I was discussing with some of my friends, and they're still having eviction issues from COVID, that people are still holdover, not having to pay. And then I've got other ones that, if you're, depending on the type of property it is, you have to wait 30 days before you file the eviction. So now you're out rent for 2 months.
2 months.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the best, process is, that I found, we were able to get somebody out within 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
They don't pay, file the 3-day, send it to the attorney. And then it's just a matter, it's rare that an eviction goes all the way through. And I try to let the resident know, like, hey, this is happening, but if you move out and you give me your keys, then I get to stop the process and you don't have an eviction on your record.
Oh yeah.
Because once you have that, you're not going to be able to rent really anywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, if I can talk them into moving on their own, and I'll be like, well, you'll just owe a debt that's, typically equal to 2 months rent and whatever you're behind. But it's a whole lot better than
Yeah,
the
having it
eviction.
down your record. Yeah.
Yeah, when I worked in when I worked for the property management company in California, I kind of like was involved with some of the process of eviction, and the one thing that always got to me was especially with the notices and then the tenant being non-responsive,
Right.
like trying to even just to have a conversation with them, be like, hey, look, let's work something out here, or even at one point I'm asking them, what can you pay today? Is there anything you can pay? Some of
And
them like,
so,
no, I have no money, I have nothing.
yeah, and even if, so we weren't allowed to take partial payments, because if
Oh,
you
okay,
took a partial payment, then the process starts over again.
It's a payment. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so it's not, whatever was on that 3 days no longer valid. You have to wait another 3 days, serve them again.
Another $20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Do you feel, Joe, like once an eviction process starts with a tenant, it should stay on their record, or
No.
no?
I mean,
Okay.
if they wait till it goes all the way through and you have the sheriff come up and we have to physically throw their belongings, out to the curb,
Yep.
then yeah, it should stay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if, like I said, if you're able to, if people, fall on hard times all the time, it
Mhm.
shouldn't follow them around for
Yeah.
the rest of their life.
Yeah.
But if they're willing to do, the steps to
Mhm.
just, find a new place, or, just move, I mean, even worst case scenario, you put your stuff in a storage unit, you get it free for the first 30 days typically.
Mhm.
But then you don't have that on your record.
Right.
Like, you have all that time to resolve it. Even if you can't pay, there is a way to do it that would alleviate you from having to deal with that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. Like a lot of people, sometimes they just go through financial hardship. Um, and it's just, for me personally, it's the tenants that are non-responsive. Like if the communication's there, then the understanding can be made. I've had tenants saying, "Look, I'm waiting on my next paycheck from work. There's just a delay with it. Give me a week, or give me a bit of time." You
And
know.
so I think like resident functions play a huge part in that. I mean, simple things, like maybe pizza in the office on Friday. It just draws them in and gives you that positive impact
Mm-hmm.
and, conversation with them.
Mhm.
And if you have those positive contacts over the course of time, even if they don't want to talk to you, they will, because you've built that rapport.
Right.
Yeah.
And they know, like, hey, this is what it is. I'm not a bad guy. It's just part of the job. But they can come talk to you
Mhm.
just as, a person, not as,
Right. Not the
hey, you owe
hard
me
tenant.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, Joe, does it have anything to do with basically the kind of the when a property's vacant and you're putting on the market for new potential tenants, like that screening process?
So the only thing that I've found kind of the screening process, it is what it is. You don't want to have, people with, really violent backgrounds living at the property. It just doesn't go well.
Right.
It's kind of sad in the fact that you can't distinguish between the two,
Mm-hmm.
because if somebody, and it's state by state. Someone, might have gotten arrested in New York, and whatever they were doing in New York wasn't, illegal in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mhm.
it happened. And now they're living back in Florida, and, that's going to follow them around. Or, it wasn't a violent crime. It just, it was,
Misdemeanor.
yeah. Well, no, just felonies, because typically misdemeanors will get through. But like something, I mean, obviously, if it's like check fraud, for example, I mean, you don't want to take checks from them,
No.
but if you agree to, hey,
Yeah,
pay with money orders, then
it can work out.
yeah, you could work out a deal. But with fair housing laws, you can't really distinguish between the two. Like, you have your criteria and that's what it is. And then sometimes part of the move-in process, first month's, last month's, security deposit, that's a lot for people to come up with. Especially they're moving out of their old place and they need to have all of this money, to get into a new place. And sometimes they just don't have it. And it's, and I understand it. And we've been able to work with that sometimes because we do move-in specials. And so it'd be like, half off your first month's rent, or, your second month, free, or what, because you want to get the payment, at least one payment before they move in. But then we were able to take that credit and space it out over the course of their entire lease to kind of just, bring down the rent for them.
Okay.
To help out in that scenario.
That's good, yeah. I don't think that existed where we were. Yeah, they just wanted everything, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, and that's the whole thing. If your property is at 98, 100%, you can do that. You can have those demands, and you're going to, I don't want to say get a better quality of resident, but I would say a more financially stable one at that point in time. But if your property is, struggling at 60%, you just want to, get people in the door and be able to fill it up. And then, you kind of deal with the issues as they arise. Because, once you're 98%, you can be a little bit more selective.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I know with the previous company we were working for, like, for example, when a tenant moves out, normally the unit, they called it the unit turnover, was the term. And it was like they tried to do it in 14 days. So basically the tenant moves out, they bring in their, and they do an inspection, stuff has to get done, goes through the homeowner approval, get things done. Try to do all that in 14 days, but I always noticed they never achieved
So it's
it.
like 20 something.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to contradict that one.
Okay.
We're supposed to do it in 3.
Oh yeah.
If it's a conventional property and you only have, maybe 10 move-outs in a given month, like, you always want to stagger your move-outs. You don't ever want to have,
Massive.
more than 5% of your property drop in a month. But yeah, it's maintenance goes in. It's punch, paint, clean, carpets, and you just schedule your vendors in that order. Long as maintenance get in there, they punch out the first day, painters are in the second day, cleaners are in there in the morning, and the carpet cleaners are in there in the afternoon. And so that's, now when I've worked student housing, that's when you have 70% of the property drop. And you're turning, I've done as many as, I want to say it was like 5,500 beds in 14 days.
Oh, wow. That's fast.
So yeah, and I've run crews. I've been on the vendor side of things where, the company just did it all. They did everything but the punch. So maintenance would go in there and punch out the units. They would have the painters, they would have the cleaners, and they would have the carpet cleaners. And we'd have to manage that. And we weren't only managing it for one property, but sometimes 6 or more. And that's once a year in the student industry. It's called term, and you're doing, 16 to 20-hour days. You're running off of, energy drinks and pizza.
Yeah.
And it's the craziest time, but it's fun because you're there with everybody, the whole crew's there, and you do the best you can, and then after it's all over, you get a huge check because of all the overtime that you recruit up.
Okay.
So
Would you say, Joe, a reasonable time frame is like maybe like 5 business days?
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy, because, and if you know, like, the residents moving out ahead of time, typically, they
Yeah.
typically have to give you a 30-day notice. And so you're able to schedule these things in advance, and let your vendors know, hey, this is what we have going on. This is when I need you here. And as long as they're on time, it just goes. And you can line up the apartments, or you can line up the houses and say, I need you here, then here, then here, then here, because then you're going to have the next vendor go in and follow them. And then the third vendor come and follow them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a big difference. With California, they only want to work like 4 or 5 hours. Like, okay, I'm tired. Yeah, let's do it again tomorrow. I think that's the
Yeah.
difference. Yeah, they don't want to do a 20-hour day. Heck no.
Well, yeah, we only do 20-hour days in student housing. That's only for 2 weeks out of the year, and it's the first. It's either like the last week of July, the first week of August, or the first week of August to the second week of August.
Okay.
See, I always said that to myself, Joe, like, yeah, there's something wrong with this process and the way they do it. So I'm like,
That's a long time.
14 days just for that. Then, the leasing agents bringing in tenants. And then by the time it gets rented, it's like maybe 30 plus days.
Yeah, I've seen one go on like
Like-
20-something days.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and then, well, you've got, like, my leasing agents can never show an unready apartment. Like, they're just not allowed to. And a lot of times these days, you don't even have an apartment. They don't even let you show an apartment. They let you show one model unit. Or the new thing is virtual reality. Like, they can they're going to the office, they put on the little helmet,
Mhm.
and they do a virtual walkthrough of an apartment.
Okay.
So, but yeah, in that case, I mean, it should decrease the vacancy time. But again, if these apartments are coming available 30 days in advance, we're renting those out, and
Mhm.
we cut down the prorate as much as possible to get them in there, because typically they got to move out of their other place at the end of the month, so they need a place to live as soon as possible.
That's true. Yeah.
Have you ever had any issues like, for example, like tenant cause? So when a tenant moves out and there's like been some damages and like trying to deduct their security deposit?
Yeah, we don't ever see that.
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Well,
I saw that every other month.
Yeah, it's pretty
Right.
common.
we
Yeah.
don't ever see the money back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we see damages all the time, holes in walls.
Alright.
Like carpets are a big one. Like, and a lot of people have gone away from it for that specific reason.
Mhm.
A carpet should have, a 7-year lifespan.
Yeah.
So if you've got someone who moves out the first year and the whole thing's destroyed, well, you're billing them for that, or the giant hole in the wall. So you bill for that, and there's standard deductions, based on everything, and you've already worked that out with the vendor ahead of time. Hey, this is what you're going to bill me. This is what I'm going to bill the residents. But then all we do is we fill out the soda and basically send it to collections. We give them 30 days. We send them their certified letter where, hey, we're keeping their deposit, and this is what you owe us. And they're like, well, I'll get you. And then we're like, okay. You send it to the collection agency, and then, at the site level, you never hear about it again.
Right.
Like, that's just it,
It's
and
over.
it goes on. Yeah, and their debt gets bought out by some other company, and, the company recoups, 40% of the debt.
Mhm.
So.
Oh yeah.
So why do you think there's a lot of damage, Joe? Like when a tenant moves out, is it because they have a pet in the property, or is it just them not really
I mean,
caring much?
I don't want to be biased or anything. Cats are the worst.
Mhm.
Cats,
Scratching.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's the urine.
Right.
Like, it'll seep into the subfloor, and you gotta seal it. And that's probably it's the worst, because the smell is horrible, but the apartment could look immaculate, and you still got that odor.
The odor. Mhm.
And other things is, kids, they're just being kids. I mean, I've got two, and I've got a hole in my wall because they opened the door.
And boom.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I didn't. There was no stopper there, and we went through the.
Yeah, same here.
Um, I mean, but sometimes it's just it's. I don't want to say quality of the tenant, but that's just how some people live. I've gone into apartments where they're hoarders and legit, clinically, and they've got a condition and they just trash the apartment. Like there's just nothing that we can do about it. We do file a 7-day once we notice it and a notice to cure, and they can go through the eviction process. But at the end of it, I want a mental instability. I won't say they're not bad people.
No, it's just something some people have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then student housing, it's the parties. You get 50 people in one apartment. Something's bound to break.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, they trash those places.
Yeah, there's some of them are left immaculate. Some of them, which ones are the party house.
Mhm.
They're missing the dining room table. They, the coffee table's broken. End tables are missing legs.
Front door.
Oh, well.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen some of those places. Yeah, it's like, wow, who's gonna pay for this?
The parents.
Parents.
So in that case, we do see the returns because the parents are the guarantors or co-signers of it, and they're responsible for it. And typically, if they're sending their kids to school, whether they're scholarship or they're paying out of pocket, they don't want their credit dinged because the kid was having too much fun.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, Joe, I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on the current state of the property management industry in 2023?
I mean, I think it's growing. I mean, people are still, these are the highest rents that I've seen. And communities are still full. Even with the interest rates when they were low and people were able to buy houses, they're just not. And I don't exactly know why. Because, I've been in the apartment industry my entire life. That's all I know is apartments.
Right.
But I've always had a free apartment. I've never had to pay rent.
Mhm.
And, recently in like the past 4 years, like I had to start paying rent. And I'm like, I don't like this.
Ouch.
Like, this is money that I'll never see again. And it's paying somebody else's mortgage, And so that's when I'm like, nope, we're buying a house. And that's what I did. But it's a lot of times, I mean, sometimes it's cheaper to rent. Sometimes you just don't want the hassle of having a house, having a yard to deal with. You don't want, if your refrigerator breaks, as a renter, it's not your responsibility to fix it. It's the landlord's. So it's I guess I want to say it's, the younger generation and also the older generation, the ones that, just don't want the hassle of having a house anymore. They're like, oh, all my kids are gone. Why do I need to keep this, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,300 square foot house when I can, downsize to an apartment and have the pool taken care of, have the yard taken care of, and just not have to worry about it. If their sink breaks, their toilet breaks, they don't have to call a plumber. They just call one person. And but yeah, and so even out here in Georgia, it's going back to these companies that are buying up all of the housing, single family homes, and they're starting to rent those out. So then it gives you the luxury of living in a home, not an apartment, without any of the overhead or worry. So, and I mean, the rates are up across the board, but so is occupancy. And so I don't really see it going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a long-term trend, I guess. Yeah. Over here in Texas, a lot of people just get a trailer house and rent a piece of land and put it over there, and that seems to be
Yeah.
I guess it's by
Well,
region.
you've got there are mobile home parks that they'll lease you just the lot. So you're paying lot rent of like $600 a month. That's just to put your mobile home, and then you have to purchase your own mobile home. So not only do you have the mortgage of the home, then you got your lot rent, and your lot rent doesn't include any of these utilities. It's literally just a piece of.
Right. Well, I think they do have drainage. I've seen some that have like the little PVC where you put your drainage pipe.
Right, but a lot of times you're paying for that, and they meter it with the water.
Okay.
So whatever your water usage is, your wastewater is double.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So that might be not be the best option.
But yeah, but I've seen a lot of people, they're doing it, and there are, especially in Florida, like high-end luxury mobile home communities. And I mean, there's one on in the Tampa area. It's got its own island. Like you literally come over the causeway, and in the middle of the causeway, you get off the ramp, and you got a 55 plus community on its own island in Florida. So
that could be a good thing. I'm trying to imagine what could go wrong there.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Joe. Like, yeah, the industry is definitely growing, and I wanted to get your thoughts on. So basically, when the pandemic hit, we noticed a lot of property management companies started to hire remote workers, right, from overseas and outsourcing. Do you think that's impacted the industry in a positive way?
I'm always a fan of that personal face to face. I like having the residents in my office. But and I don't think I would outsource overseas at all. If you were to go remote, I would pick someone that was local in that area, because if something does go wrong, I mean, you still have to go to the property. You still have to do inspections. And if you're not doing quarterly inspections, then you don't know what you're in for when that person moves out. And so that's when you can have those 30-day turns, because you haven't seen that apartment in a year and you don't know what it looks like. And your vendors, like if you're outsourcing overseas, who are your vendors? Are they doing a good job? Or are you just hiring someone, they're going in, scheduling it, and you never see it? And then that's the problem, because then your resident's first impression is, well, this is crap because nobody inspected it. And you have, like you said, those people who only want to work 4 hours a day, and they just want to slap on some paint, or I mean, better yet, they'll spray it. They'll spray everything.
Yeah, it kind of matches, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the floor and the walls all be the same color.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a bad first impression, though. And then then you're already off on a bad foot, where if you're delivering them a quality of unit that you would move into, then it's going to start off more on a positive note, and they're more likely to renew. And the longer you can keep them there, I mean, it's the more money that you're going to make, because, I mean, the management companies, and when I'm going back to talk about the fees, what I've seen recently is that when a management company is managing single family homes, and they have 1,000 front doors, they could have 1,000 different owners. And the way that they do their billing is, if they come to them without a renter, then their fee is the first month's rent, along with, going forward, the monthly management fee, anywhere between 5 and 10%. Well, on the renewal, it's half a month's rent. And then, but you're not paying that, fee to advertise anymore. You're not paying the painters, the carpet cleaners, the, maintenance men, or locator fees. So, I mean, renewals will always win out of a new resident. I mean, unless, other extenuating circumstances exist. So you want to keep the resident happy, and it doesn't take a whole lot. There's a problem, you fix it. Collect rent, and now the rent process is all online, so you never even see them for that.
Right.
So
Just their ID.
yeah. Not sometimes once they're on the portal, the rent payment you just never, we'll never see. Yeah, when they pay rent, we'll never see the ID. Well, when they move in, but even then, I think even with single family homes, I would be there on move-in day, to hand them keys, walk them through, do an initial inspection, just in case anything was missed, if they catch anything, and then it's the walkthrough form, so they can mark down any damage that they see.
Yeah, they always find something.
Yeah. And a lot of it's they just don't want to be billed for it when they move out. It's not even like, oh, fix this now, or I'm unhappy. It's, oh, there's a, scratch in the countertop, and, don't think that I did this, and try to bill me for it when I move out.
All right. Yeah, that's a great answer there. So fortunately, we ran out of time. Yeah, we had a great podcast interview here with Joe Glass from Florida. So yeah, we really hope to have a part 2 in the future with him.
Yep, definitely. And thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Well, to our viewers and listeners, until next time, thank you so much.
Till next time.
Have a good one.